Hey guys, do you know how we romanticize and feel sorry for bank robbers, right? How we think somehow that cash is always king. How we think that anyone that goes to rob a bank will come out with a whole wad of cash. Yeah. And this is all coming from a lot of movies, okay? But we'll start from, I think it was Baker Street in 1971. There's also I think it was the Italian Job that came up as well. There's also this Northern Ireland Belfast movie in 2004, where a family went in and robbed the bank and made away with 26.5 million cash. There's also a movie as well with Banco. I think it was a bank in Brazil where they were robbed in 2005. Pure cash. I think wrote loads of movies around this, right? So I want to talk about cash. I want to talk about how those movies are not realistic, no matter how we think they are, and how they just don't lead anywhere, especially in this day and age. So if you're watching those movies, just know that that's so behind. It is so behind that it's actually a risk these days. So we see a lot of people coming up and saying, hey, I take cash only in my shops. Hopefully you don't, but if you take cash only, then you're putting yourself, imagine yourself being the bank in this case, you're becoming the bank where you're going to be robbed. But you're behind the curve because banks don't do that anymore, right? So when you see those guys going in and robbing the bank, generally, I'll tell you why that can't happen. And again, listen to me because I'm a banker, and also I'm the CEO of fintech, a fintech app, which is Uruka, has a smart ring that allows you tap to pay. So you don't need cash anymore. You can also tap to pay with these bracelets. You don't need cash anymore. So we're against cash, okay? And clearly, I clash with a lot of people online where they believe that cash is king. They come ahead. In fact, some go on my videos and say, hey, I prefer to walk around with a wad of cash. Generally, these are always people in Europe, Switzerland, USA, okay, and countries where they only use that currency. Funny enough, right? Which is quite clear, and you can always tell based on their profile as well. It's either people that use cash and don't travel, because if you travel, your cash is useless, or you use the cash and you're in a very, very posh area. Yeah, I mean very posh, and that's not an insult to you as well. But it's just the way it is. Like you don't walk around with a wad of cash, and if you're from London, you don't walk around with a wad of cash in Peckham. Yeah, if you're from the projects, you don't walk around with it in the USA. You don't walk around with a wad of cash. If you do, you're getting robbed. Yeah, even by your friends, by your family. So that's something to watch out for. Which I just think people are not, being realistic in terms of how they work. They're not being realistic in terms of life, and the romanticization of old cash and banks still remains. Yeah, and that's a problem. So I want to talk about that and why that can't work anymore. So if you go into a bank these days, I can tell you generally, banks don't hold more than 5, 10,000. So banks these days, in fact, if you go to the UK, you'll be hard pressed to see a bank branch. Why? Because it's all online now. Yeah, no one goes to a bank to actually drop cash. If you drop cash, and there are a lot of people who complain about this, right? I'll talk about the operational side of things first. So it costs money to keep cash. It costs money to count cash. Okay. So generally, you would see banks actually leaving the cash with the treasury, right? Which is basically, again, the central bank is where the cash is left. What they now left with is electronic cash. In fact, electronic cash accounts for 95% of cash these days. And we can argue there's a lot of people, especially online, who know nothing. Again, I'm not trying to insult them, right? But those guys, you can look at their profile. Okay, this day and age, there's no need to hide. You look at their profile and see these guys have never worked in banks. Yeah. Or they've not gone to school and believe the school is a farce, things like that. But again, not an insult to them. But if you look at those guys, they need to understand how banking works. Okay. So generally, I can tell you, banks, I agree that there is some, numbers where people just make up numbers, as they call it, where basically if it's an electronic cash, the bank is issuing cash or issuing electronic money. Those are called EMIs and they are authorized. Yeah. So my rings, for instance, if you give us cash, which is electronic, that's electronic. Then we allow you spend with this ring, that's electronic. So technically, we don't have any cash, we only have electronic. So we're issuing electronic, right? Now, if you look at that, people complain and compare that, but that's exactly what banks are doing as well. Bank get electronic cash coming in, they issue electronic cash also to customers. That's why everything is all electronic these days. There's no fraud, there's nothing hidden there. What spells fraud, where people talk about, is what's called fractional reserve. That's basically where they, as a business, take risks, okay, and they're leveraging. That's what's called leveraging. Everyone does that in trading. If you go into trading these days, you shouldn't, by the way, guys. If you go into trading and you have, I don't know, $100 in your brokerage account, you can trade up to 1,000 That's 9 to 1 leverage. Okay, so you're doing a leverage on your cash, which is also the same thing with banks. So banks have sometimes they have I think they're allowed up to 1% or 2%, fractional reserve. That would mean that they have cash sitting in the cash, which is deposits, and they can go ahead and actually invest that deposit and also carry on risks. And that's how they make money. Okay. So it's not like they're just writing things off the air as people think it is, but it's just the fact that they're now purely electronic. Now, where does this lead into? This leads into the fact that if you open up a bank or go into any bank here, we're up in the mountain here. If you go to any of these mountains here, you're going to see that there is simple. There's just a branch. But that branch, if you try and rob it, there's nothing in there because it's all electronic. Yeah. And then what will happen then is effectively people going. In fact, I think, there used to be people go out and think the Joker, I think, was another recent movie where they showed up and they had a whole wad of cash and then they went in and they told the teller, hey, don't press the alarm. And then they go ahead and get a lot of cash. Then they go into a safe. And then within the safe, you can go ahead and, again, these are such a romantic, really old movies, but a romantic side of things where we actually all support the thief because somehow we think the banks are holding the cash. I'm not on the side of the banks here, by the way, because again, we're going against banks here with our rings. Yeah. So we're replacing banks. The bank is now on your ring, on your wrist. So that's a problem for banks. But for us, I think the point here is the fact that, hey, the electronic side of things in the banks, number one is for convenience. And number two is then the fact that it's not, it's security so that if you go to a bank, you will not see cash anymore. And so that if there's anyone going to rob a bank, it's definitely not professional thieves anymore because professional thieves know that the risk associated with going in there to just get electronic or to get the deposit that's coming during the day, which in general is 1,000, 2,000 max, per customer. That's 100, 200K maximum across every teller. So you'd have to go into every teller and rob them one by one, which is a pain, yeah, for any professional thief. So what you'd get would be, again, and most of the banks already have secret alarms, which is not really a button as you used to think. It could just be a look. And we have our glasses. So our glasses can actually trigger an alarm. We have what's called Oruka waves. Oruka waves is basically a wearable that you wear on your head. If you think about something, we trigger an SOS. And we're using it for payments. So check it out, Oruka waves. So we're trying to do it for payments as well. So that if you think about payment, a payment is made. Now, you're not going to see a red button anymore. So what happens then is people already have small triggers around where if someone's getting robbed, it's triggered. What are you really robbing? Not a lot, okay? Because what will happen then is you go in and then you see, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000. So that's not a lot. So no professional thieves goes into do that. Most likely it's going to be, I don't know, a drug addict or, someone who just wants to rob for the sake of it because they saw it in a movie. But in truth, you don't see that anymore. So that's it. So I think the point we're trying to make there is one, those movies that you see, unfortunately, is not real. And I'm saying it as part of a scene. So realistically, it's not real anymore. You can't go into a bank and rob them. No, you can't. And movies where you see people go in and leaving with a wad of cash is just a movie. It doesn't happen in real life, and you wouldn't expect it to happen in real life. Unfortunately, what that means then, which I need to address, is the fact that most of the robbery now happens online. Yeah, so it's a lot easier. You could rob 1 million online. I mean, everyone knows about the Bitcoin heist the other day where they robbed an exchange of 42 million. Yes, so everything is now online. And in fact, your average robber is not going to be the type that you see in movies anymore. It's going to be a kid with a t-shirt who's gone in and just robbed X amount from a bank, and it's not from it could be an online bank. This is what I think was this is what's called a business email compromise, as simple as that, where you could go in and find out the email of companies, and then when they're transferring money across, either from real estate or from lawyers, you spoof the email, which is as simple as that. You spoof the email, put your own bank details, and that gets transferred to you. As simple as that. So it's not romantic as it used to be. I don't know if anyone supports that. We definitely don't support that. If you watch that in the movie, you're not definitely supporting those hackers because generally they're always on the bad side. Those days used to be good because you support the thief, the criminal. You hope, oh my God, I hope everyone is safe. In general, what will happen in movies, the protagonist or the actor is usually a good person that really has to rob the cash to do something good, right? A bit of Robin Hood scenario. But that's all changed now. And now it's all moved online. So it's a long way of saying, guys, be careful out there. One, everything's done online these days. I think I talked a lot about phones. Be careful with your phones. Phones are your lives. There is a weak point in any of this online robbery. Okay. Similar to those with cash in the bank, you go in and the guard is your entry point. If you can go past the guard, you're in the bank, you could rob. That was in the 60s, in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Now, 70s. Now, with cash gone out, guess what? Do we just go online? But you can't just go online and rob. That means they rely on us, on people, humans to get in. So what does that mean? Be careful online. Be careful with your phones. Then I talk about it a lot. This is not connected online. You can just tap to pay. For anyone to steal this, they have to come into your line, your phone, your finger, and grab this off your fingers if they can. They can't. Or even if they can, we can also use biometrics to lock it. So it's a lot more sophisticated in terms of security these days. But the weak point remains your phone. So be careful with your phone. If your bank calls you, be careful there as well. I'm going to talk about banking later, okay? But that's something we're doing wrong on the banking side, not me. We don't do this. So now on our app, MoneySave, will never call you. If we call you, that's a problem. In fact, all we'll do is just summarize or let you know, hey, you call us. Generally, that's it. We've never seen anything go wrong. In fact, if anyone steals your ring, we can tell and we block it. We won't call you, we'll block it. Until you call us and say, hey, this and this has gone wrong, and we tell you. And there are a few things that we do there. But in general, if anyone calls you to claim to be, hey, this is MoneySave or this is your Ruka payment ring, sorry, hang up immediately, number one. Number two, so what? As long as they don't take it off your fingers, no one is spoofing and no one is stealing from you. So that's important to note. Phones are gone these days. They're just a weak point where people can go in and actually grab you either by text, by phone, by by viruses being attacked on your phone or online. So guys, be careful. Bitcoin, I think, would have been a good one. Bitcoin, the vulnerabilities are just crazy. Even with your seed phrase, still is a problem. So be careful out there, guys. That's all I'm going to say. And enjoy the weather for those in Europe and beyond. Take care and all the best.